And we're back. Sorry about that a couple times. So we know offline. OBS and I are not having a good relationship today. It's crashed like at least three, possibly four times, which is frustrating to say the least. Um, I have no idea what's going on. Obviously, I need to spend some time with OBS to be like, why are you doing it this way? Anyway, so we had a great time learning about Odo.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did. Um, really did expose some really nice observation loops. Sure, let's go with that. Where we can spend and understand the developer workflow on top of OpenShift. Is there any questions or thoughts from the chat? Do you feel like you learned something? It'd be nice to get a little interaction. So I want to make sure we're going down the right path here. Give it a second to catch up.
I think like my personal getaway from this is I should start using ODO a little bit more because that's definitely really easy to work on applications, right? Like I haven't been doing that before. Like I've used, I use source image and do all the things with the OC command, but like this makes it so that there's that easier opinionated way to do it that works and it's fine. And it's what I would do myself anyways, right? So
where's the layer in your mind as a developer? I'm a sysadmin, so I build the infrastructures, but I don't actually do the code. Where would you
typey type? I had a manager just like, it's all typey type. 2 weeks of work, right?
There you go.
Every answer is typey type.
Where's the line where you would, as a developer, use ODO to automate pushing something out for you? Like, would you want a wrapper scripting around ODO, or would you just be like, get push, dunk, and it goes out to ODO, or ODO like runs with a Jenkins job and then kicks it into OpenShift? Like, do you see where I'm going with this?
I do, and I don't know that I would put it at the CI/CD layer.
Okay.
I think it's a local machine type of. The last bit of that demo is, in my opinion, the absolute best place for it. Of making changes, run them, making changes, run them. So I can boom, boom, boom. After that, once I put it into Git, I think ODO falls out of the equation. And then you have your Jenkins doing the builds like you would for the actual shippable containers, presumably using a Docker file. Now, I believe, and I'm not customer facing enough to know details, I believe we have people using SI in other places, in Jenkins part of the pipeline. I personally, I lack the gray beard, but I have the gray beard mentality enough of not understanding the guts of what S2I is doing with my build. So I would personally rather hand roll a Docker file so I know that I've stripped out everything I want to strip out and I've only installed the pieces I need to. And I could do my due diligence and look into the source to image builder images and understand what they're doing. But I think,
I feel like that's a really good tangent right now to take. Maybe one of y'all share your screen and show us where to get this source to it to S2I images. Like if I was my graybeard, to your point, I would love to know what that image is, what it's actually doing. I mean, you showed the modern web app one, but that was on a different ecosystem, right? Not OpenShift.
how?
At least the namespace.
I'm thinking, yeah. I mean, I just like to, well, first to answer your question from my perspective, kind of what I would think would be as I'm like iterating, making the changes, ODO, no doubt, because that's like ultra easy, like things sync and it's quick, right? Especially if I'm working on a web app, all that stuff, it's really easy. But then to what Jay's saying, exactly, like either you have an existing pipeline processor, CI build stuff, like check it into source control. That gets built, puts into, you know, your dev environment staging automatically, right? That's what you should do, is what I'm thinking. You know, that being said, though, right, if you're using OpenShift and Jenkins, which, you know, Jenkins, you get a when you roll OpenShift, you could deploy Jenkins fairly easily, and in that Jenkins, you have the OpenShift DSL, so the domain specific language that's already a part of that allows you to connect into OpenShift. And you could run your pipeline that way, and you could use Jenkins to do your Docker file build if you want. But I've seen a lot of people also do S2I builds in that as well. And you kick them off with a Jenkins pipeline, and it's like, hey, OpenShift, go do my thing, build what I need to do. And you're doing it the OpenShift way, right? And like, that's how I've seen it. And I've seen, you know, varying, you know, some people like the Docker file approach, using the Docker stuff in Jenkins. Some people would rather just use OpenShift native stuff, right? And I mean, from like my personal opinion, like, I don't have a preference. I think that they both work. And now, you know, what's coming down the road is, you know, some of the OpenShift pipelines or Tecton, which is what that's based off of, right? And that allows you to do a similar type of thing, right? So you would be using a build approach in that type of, you know, method, right? I think it all depends on, you know, kind of how you guys have what you're doing architected, and, you know, what you determine, you know, you want to do. If you want full control, you want to really understand it, dig into S2I like Jay's saying, or just go and, you know, use your Docker file build and, you know, do those things and run that in Jenkins, or run that wherever you want, right? That works too.
Awesome. I'll unmute you, Jay, but you were so loud.
I bet I type, so I've always been yelled at. Back when I used to work in an office, they hated me. And when everyone hears that, they're like, "What, do you have a mechanical keyboard?" No, I actually don't. It would be absolutely ridiculous if I did. So apologies for that. I was answering a quick chat message.
I was just going to say, I have a key tester on my desk in range of my hands all the time. So don't worry.
The original little fiddle type thing, you know, like the fidget spinner type crap. Like that was there a long time ago, right?
So that has all the different, like the cherries and the browns and stuff like that?
It's got the majority of them. These are like the most non-common. But over the years of having this, on one day, when I have money from my CFO, aka my wife, I'm gonna build my own, and I have specific keys that I want on specific places, because I
you want like a linear WASD, and then you want like clicky regular keys. Yeah.
Like when I know, I also type in Dvorak, so my keys are always, I need to have the heavier ones in the center, so I know the ones I'm getting the more work, and then when I move, like I can go into hours.
So you have this. Is that a custom ortholinear keyboard, or
that's a Kinesis, right?
It's
Kinetic.
Kinesis. Advantage Pro 2. I have a foot pedal with it too. Yeah.
Wait, what do you use it for? Oh my God, we could spend the rest of the day on this. I've always thought about that.
Yes.
What do you use it for?
The one that I really landed on was because I use a Mac, or at the time I used a Mac. Now I use Linux with Fedora for a long time. Now I've come back to a Mac. I use it for the command or push to talk, because like I use something called Shush on my Mac, where if I double tap it, like right now, but I double tap it again, it goes back on. But if I hold it, and then it does either push to talk or push to silence. So having that as a footprint makes life so much easier, because I can be typing away and I'd be like, oh, just move that. Or with the Apple command key, like copy is just like move my foot, hit the C, done.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm all for that. I got to points where I key map as much as possible because I hate if I have to touch the mouse, something's gone wrong.
Yep.
And I've thought, I'm like, I'd rather be able to incorporate my feet, use it for like maybe the super button or something like that.
I will throw
Yeah.
out obviously you use a lot of Tmux, and I saw how you split, and it was very natural. I'd be curious to see your Tmux conf or whatever, because I've read the Tmux book, and the problem is with that, it's kind of like Emacs, where you just made so many configuration that it's a completely different app or a particular thing. You need to start from the ground up. I know that much, but what did you start with? Because obviously it's very natural for you.
Sure. So you're right. It's actually a fairly beefy Tmux file. So I just linked in chat my files because, like any good geek, I have my files in GitHub. So you can see there, and I'm going to share for 1 second while I do still have this floating around.
I'm cool with this.
Oh my God, I love this shit. I love seeing people's development environments. It's one of the things I'm looking forward to doing more on stream stuff because this stuff absolutely fascinates me. So I've remapped my kind of activation key to A, so you can't see my hands, but AC, and I'm just jamming back and forth on these to make new. If you look at the bottom to see which one I'm on. One of the biggest changes I love about it is that I hold down Shift and left and right moves between them. And that has been super valuable to me. And then A comma is to rename. So when I was actually working on this exact code, I would do this, I would rename this one to backend, and then I would always have this open to the concession backend code. So I would have my tails going in here. Oops, F. And actually, let's completely nerd out.
Do you use workspaces?
Yes, I have. What am I at right now? I don't know if you can see it. It's about 16. No, 12. 12.
Okay.
One issue I had when I moved to Mac is their workspace support was kind of shit. So I had dialed it down to 9, and then I would do super QW.
No. The workspace is in Tmux.
Oh no!
So yeah, I took that as known workspaces or whatever.
Yeah. But now I'm intrigued.
So with Tmux, you can actually save off different ways you've done things as a workspace. So if you had this was your setup for working on your front end, back end, logging, blah, 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 you can save it as a file. So then you're like, hey, next time I come to this, Tmux run this thing, and it'll the whole thing for you. So you don't have to build it all up all over again. It's already there.
Oh, that's cool. I love the idea of that. It's a little bit rare for me to ever have a single setup. Because I'll usually just leave my computer on when in the middle of something. I'm in total rice mode right now where I'm just pulling up all this shit that looks like super cool. In fact, we'll just show you how that. But yeah, I like that idea though, that instead of recreating them on the fly.
That's just a simple quick Google search, but that looks like 95% of what you need to know.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'll do that a lot. So I'll shift back and forth. Control A comma is to rename, so that way I can know which one I'm on. The biggest issue I have at Tmux is I can't just scroll up and down. You have to enter that Control A bracket mode to be able to scroll, which I'm sure this looks like shit over Twitch as I'm scrolling through text so quickly.
I think there's a mouse mode or something that you can
Yeah, but I don't want a mouse. If I have to mouse, something's gone wrong.
You resized your panes pretty effectively.
Oh
yeah. How's that?
Yeah, you've got that set.
Yes. So Control A, and then while I'm holding down Control, I just use the up and down arrows, or the left and right arrows. And to break the panes, it's Control A dash for a horizontal break, and Control A pipe for a vertical one, because that's what they look like on the keyboard to me.
Yeah.
So that's how I actually remember them. And that's basically all of the changes I've made, because otherwise I'll start to lose them. For exactly what you were saying, it starts to look too different. So there's a few things in here I'll call just random shit that I don't even remember what it does anymore. And then I've broken out. So the shift keys for the navigation, the Control A is the prefix rather than Control B. Here, I've explicitly mapped these two for the splits because that's what just feels right to me to remember it. And then, yeah, I love like once you get into that flow and starting to pick things up like that. I had been doing Powerline for a while. It looked very slick with Powerline back when I was using it. And then being able to pop around, it makes for great use for demos for exactly what I was using it for, where I can have the bottom one showing a watch and then things like that. There are times where I'll split off the curl over here so I can keep that running at the same time or something like that. So yeah, take a look at my dot files. You'll see lots of cool nerdy shit in there. You can get an idea for my environment. And like I said, yeah, the TMUX stream, exactly. I this kind of stuff I will lose hours to it. Like you can see at the top, I'm using Polybar. And when I discovered that and all of the ways you can tweak that, I just blinked and it was like midnight. So yeah, take a look at that. Ask me any questions you got. That was your TMUX power 15 minutes.
Nice.
But like I said, I could easily just do a stream where my team just showed off their dev environments because I'm always picking up something from what everyone does. Like the first thing I notice is people's shell prompts, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool, or that's super verbose. Like one guy recently had his username, and then it said the word at, and then the host, and then the word in, and then the directory. And it was neat. It was too chatty for me, but it was neat. All of these brackets have a meaning. So when I enter a Python environment, what do I have set up? I don't know if I have any right now.
While you're doing that, I did throw the good T-Bunks book in the chat. If you haven't a chance to read it, it is a little bit overwhelming, legit. But no, that one. Sorry, the next one. Next link. Is it not coming up yet?
Yeah, I got it.
There we go. This is phenomenal, but it is so overwhelming because you'll end up coming out with like, oh, I can do all this stuff. But you're like, I don't know what anything does anymore.
Remember it. Yeah, exactly. At that point, you're just like learning Emacs or Vim for the first time. You're like, I know there's ways to do this stuff, but I don't remember any of them.
You don't have to muscle
memory. This is interesting to me because I really like the Pragmatic Programmer series, and I love this subtitle of mouse-free development. Like they've kind of nailed me on cover alone. If I'm judging a book by its cover.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want, right?
Yeah, this hits on so many levels.
That's great.
Yeah, so that's my TMUX setup. I will stop there. Brian, you want to start the code ready stuff, or?
Yeah, let's go for it. I definitely am with you on the showing off the environment type of thing.
I mean, I'll watch your environment, Brian, if you want.
Right now, because I'm streaming on Zoom and I normally use Sway and Wayland, and how I can't share screens that way. I don't have anything special.
Okay.
I had to ditch Wayland. OBS was not happy with Wayland at all. Exactly. It didn't detect half of them, half of my windows. And then like Spotify runs better under Xorg. So I think I set the default. I haven't rebooted the box since I did that. So we'll see what happens on Monday when I turn this on again. But
for me, like the thing that I really like the best is I use like an ultra wide monitor, and the biggest thing like with Linux productivity is like not dealing with this window goes over here. So tiling Windows managers are awesome in my opinion. There's some extensions for GNOME that are okay. I think there's one that's like Pop OS. So Pop OS Shell is starting to look like it's going to be pretty nice. I might, hey, use GNOME and, don't have to do too many configs out of the box, but I like tweaking with stuff.
Yeah.
So anyways.
A good engineer knows the tools that they use, and they make sure their tools fit the way they want to do the work.
No doubt.
Pulling the generic tool off. Like if you're vimrc, even as someone who doesn't use a Vim, I still have a vimrc of things I've changed over the years to make sure that if I have to play with Vim, it has all the things I want. Right? Like it shows, for lack of a better term, seniority, knowing your tooling, knowing what you're doing, knowing how to morph the software to do what you wanted to get done.
Yeah,
Right?
it shows that, yeah, you've been, you kind of know what's going on. I completely agree, and I love that. So I like the customization aspect and seeing what everyone else is doing, just like what Jay is saying, because that way you learn new stuff, right?
And you're so much more productive once you get that stuff. Like you said, you saw me kind of flying around Tmux. Like once you learn those key bindings, like everything starts to fly. Same with your IDE. Like once you learn the code completion and the tooling, like it's like how far can I go and how many lines of Java can I write without ever typing out the full line and
Yep.
using some form of autocomplete.
What's
Agree.
Java?
On that note.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, so to kind of get going, what is code ready containers and why are we even talking about it here? So code ready containers is really the way to run OpenShift on your laptop. Is pretty much the marketing one sentence, pitch. And it's pretty awesome. It's nice. Like I've been using it around the house whenever I'm, doing development and stuff and, working on OpenShift that way. And to Jay's point, the reason, we talked about this last week, if I'm doing some kind of local development, do I really need, a cluster in AWS or using a full production cluster or whatever? Like
On IBM
not
Cloud.
really.
IBM Cloud.
IBM Cloud, what have you? Exactly, yeah. It doesn't necessarily, like, I don't need that for my own development. Whenever I push to the Git repo and then do whatever I'm doing, that makes sense then too. But say I'm developing that pipeline and that workflow. Well, I know that we're going to be using OpenShift. How do I develop that, without incurring all the charges to be able to, run a 5-node OpenShift or Kubernetes cluster? That gets expensive. So it's a common problem across everybody. They have that. Before with OpenShift, part of, what we had was mini shift. And, basically that allowed you to run OpenShift or OKD, the origin. So, the community version in a Docker container on your laptop, right? And you could spin up OpenShift really easy. And that was the purpose of Minishift. Same, as Minikube, right? But for OpenShift.
Can we take a quick aside and unmute Jay too? Because he types so fucking loud.
I really thought my mic was muted. I apologize because when I slide it up, it should mute at the mic level.
It's the space bar. It's literally the space bar. I can hear that. You're conk.
So wait, I'm gonna try it right now. Can you hear this?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Shit, I thought this thing was supposed to be muted at that point. My bad, because I have no idea what's actually picking it up. Okay, apologies.
No worries. So quick aside. OKD. Yeah. All right. So we have production OpenShift. We have OKD, and then we have code ready containers. Like it's the model of Fedora, CentOS, RHEL, and there's an OpenShift path question mark of that.
Yeah. So there's many different ways and places that you could run OpenShift. I'm trying to. It's been a little bit since I've looked at the page that has all the different, like OpenShift dedicated, Microsoft Azure, Red Hat OpenShift, OpenShift on IBM Cloud, right? OpenShift container platform. The easiest way to really explain this probably is like the one slide that has all of those things. And one of them is if I want to run OpenShift in my own environment, I manage it, etc. That's OpenShift container platform. If I'm running in a cloud, you could be using OpenShift on IBM Cloud, where you showed last week. It's managed. We have our own worker nodes that are part of our thing, all that stuff. There's OpenShift dedicated, where you could go and just click a button and get access to an OpenShift cluster that's managed by Red Hat, pretty much. So all those are OpenShift ways to, run different places. But if I want to run locally, what do I do? So the way that you do that is either have an OpenShift OCP, OpenShift Container Platform cluster available to me that I'm running locally, bare metal, VMware, whatever, or I would just want development stuff. So I'm using code ready containers. So that's OpenShift in a one node virtual machine, which I'll talk about, some of that detail. But I could run that locally, similar to, if you're familiar exactly with Minishift, Minikube, all that stuff, right? So that's the one way. But that being said, right, OpenShift costs money. You have to pay for licenses, you pay per core, depending on where you're deploying it, you're paying for OpenShift. Plus your compute resources or hardware or whatever. So there's, with that, you're getting Red Hat support, you're getting the ability to have, that enterprise hardening, all that stuff, plus the source to image builders that are part of the OpenShift and all that. And what we had right now, it's kind of in a weird flux stage. It should be sometime soon, but OKD, which is the origin, is what they call it, the origin Kubernetes distribution. So basically what this is OpenShift, community version, no support, maybe think about CentOS, right? Maybe that's kind of like CentOS to RHEL, OKD to OpenShift. It's not the exact same, but I kind of like to think of it that way.
Got it.
With OKD, we had the ability to provision this and run this stuff with OpenShift 3 what have you, right? Once OpenShift 4 came, because fundamentally, we probably should talk about, maybe some of this stuff. Like, this is kind of like a lot of detail when we talk about operators and all this stuff, maybe. But with OpenShift 4, the way that things are ran and managed on the cluster is so different. Operators manage a lot of different things, and the way that it gets installed is much different. Instead of using an Ansible script, you're using the installer. There's a lot of different things with OpenShift 4 specific. But because of that, OKD needed to basically, I guess, catch up or, be redone to, go with the same OpenShift 4 ways.
Got it.
So I think it was like maybe 6 days ago or something like that. If you look up the OpenShift Commons YouTube, so OpenShift Commons, which we talked about that. It's the community for OpenShift. We talked about that on the last call. But I want to go to the YouTube for OpenShift. And on here, they post a lot of the OpenShift Commons videos. We do Commons gatherings and everything's all recorded and all of that. On here, one of them is the current state of OKD4, and it's currently in beta. I know you can't hear any audio or whatever, but I just want to pull this up. So this was a presentation literally a week ago that talks about OKD is now in beta. You could provision this stuff. If you want to run OKD on, similar places that OpenShift will run, right?
In the
chat, the video I could place in the chat. One of the
perfect.
other things, speaking of OKD, that you want to know is okd.io. And whoops, I just resized that by accident. And from here, you could go to okd.io under the downloads. You could see try the OKD4 preview.
Nice.
That's on here. So click on that. It'll take you to GitHub with some of the details on how to get started. So I'll paste that into the chat too. So yeah, OKD is awesome. Easy way to have an OpenShift cluster or an OKD cluster. It's not OpenShift. And definitely there's some changes, and in some of this stuff, like you could kind of read and see the differences and all of that stuff. So OKD uses Fedora CoreOS instead of Red Hat Enterprise Linux CoreOS, and then there's some other changes. Instead of using the pool secret for Red Hat's image repository, you're using Koi.io, and you need some kind of authentication for that. So you create the pool secret. Watch that video. It's 10 minutes, 15 minutes long. It'll get you caught up on what's going on.
Perfect. Perfect.
So yeah, that's OKD. Full-blown cluster, right? You're going to need at a minimum 3 master nodes, like you would need with OpenShift, as well as 2 worker nodes to be able to handle your workload and all that stuff, right? So that's requiring 5 VMs at a minimum, plus 1 to provision, which is similar to the way that OpenShift gets installed, right? So you need a lot of, resources, because this is going to actually be a distributed computing system, like we talked about at the beginning of this.
Yep.
With code-ready containers, I couldn't think of code-ready containers. With code-ready containers, it basically packages all that stuff into the one VM that runs on libvirt. It'll run on VirtualBox. It could run on Hyper-V in Windows. It'll run with the native Xhive or whatever it is on OS X that you have already by default. So you have hypervisors that are part of your OS, and code-ready containers runs all that stuff together. So think about, you're running everything in that one node. There are some resources that are required. So the minimum spec of resources that you need to run this is different than what it was with Minishift, just because there's a lot more things going on. Granted, they're all managed by operators, and some of those things are turned off by default in OKD to run better. Like, you don't necessarily need logging for development, but you could turn it on really easy, for example. There are other things that you might be able to turn off to save resources and all that. But like the minimum set of requirements for this are 4 CPUs or 4 vCPUs if you're running it virtually, like we're talking about. You need 8 gigs of memory available and 35 gigs of hard drive space where this is running. So it does require some hardware. I'm not gonna lie there. But yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's an easy way to run it locally.
Perfect.
So what I usually do to kind of get started or whatever is I'll just Google code-ready containers. This first URL, developers.redhat, is usually the landing page that I'll hit. GitHub also will work. There's OpenShift. There's documentation on the regular OpenShift docs that have some details around this stuff too. But I just pasted that in the chat. And if you go click on download, this will take me to the Red Hat cloud.redhat.com portal, which JJ talked about a little bit earlier. And on here, you have to have an account. You don't have to have licensing or whatever. You just need to have a Red Hat account. So if you're new, go ahead and register an account. But I am going to log in here.
Password 122364.
What just happened? Where do you see that?
Nothing.
No, that is not correct. Anyways, so yeah, I logged in. There's definitely more letters than 1, 2, 3, 4 in that password. And you'll
He
get
keeps going back to
presented
it. You get the feeling he's nervous we just exposed his password?
Yeah.
It's like, no, guys, I promise. It's the same password as my luggage.
There's so many different Red Hat accounts anyways.
I know.
Yeah, so you go here, make sure you pull up like the documentation or the getting started guide. Both of those are pretty helpful. Let me close some of these tabs real quick. And I will pull up that getting started page. So on here, getting started, and you could read about all of the various, switches and ways to get this deployed and some of the requirements, and I highly recommend that. But I'm just going to show you how to do it. So first off, pick whichever platform you're on. I'm on Linux, so I would download this. I already have it downloaded. It's about like a 200 meg download, or sorry, a 2 gig download, I think. Yeah, it's 2 gigs if I remember right. So already downloaded. One of the things that I've kind of like noticed, you could go in here and copy the link location if you saw what I did. And I'll throw this here in the browser. Whoops. And I'm getting rid of some of this stuff up to like the latest where we're at CRC.
Oh, there you go.
And in here, I could see all the various versions, right? This is, similar to the OpenShift CLI, all that stuff. But it's pretty neat because this allows you to go back into time pretty much and say that I'm working on an OpenShift version 2.10 or 4.2.10 cluster in our production, and it hasn't been updated and all of that. I could pretty much, closely match my CRC virtual machine to whatever I'm running in production. And,
Nice.
I switch around and do various things because, what I'm doing is I'm testing different platforms and all that stuff. So you can do that, and I definitely recommend you do that if you need to. Maybe you're running 4.2 in production, but sometime soon 4.3 is going to come around, and you want to test your app and make sure everything works the way that it should in 4.3. Well, look at the latest one, which is 1.8.0 for code ready containers. Under this release info on here, you can see we've got 4.3.8 as the OpenShift version. So I have a couple of those sitting around.
Hey, Brian, before you leave this, go up to the clients directory, one level above.
Yeah, so if I go up more, this is all of the
There's
various client. Yeah. So
we were talking about Odo before and how to get it. This is another option for it.
Nice.
ODO, yeah. So the various versions and all that stuff are there. We have Helm, OC, so the OC command line. Serverless also has a Knative client that you could use. So all those things are a part of that, which is pretty sweet. I don't think you could go, farther up there might be, I don't think there's anything too interesting. Maybe Red Hat Core OS. I don't know. Anyways, basically I stick around that clients and download whatever versions or whatever I need for that. Okay, so one of the things before we get going is looking at the docs. Again, make sure that hardware requirements are set up the right way, and make sure that you have your operating system requirements set up. So if we're using Windows to run,
I only use BOS. Is that supported?
I mean, Linux, maybe. I don't know. It's like usually a catch-all.
It's exactly what I would expect from a guy who brought up COBOL last week.
Yeah, right. One of the big things really for Windows and Mac users are make sure you have the latest operating system updates. That's pretty much your requirements. For Linux, we have some required packages and required things, so go through and read this stuff. We support pretty much Red Hat, Enterprise Linux, CentOS, Fedora should probably work. Ubuntu, it will work, but not officially supported. What you're talking about, JJ, same thing. Might work, not supported.
Yeah, the Ubuntu in particular, not to really go down far in this, but you got to realize network manager is used pretty heavily by CRC. And what anyone has gotten on Ubuntu, which is say myself and someone else on our team, has bumped into of getting network manager to play side by side with the Ubuntu default, and then have code ready be available on top of that can be non-trivial.
Completely agree. Yeah. So like looking at the packages needed. So if you're on Fedora, you probably have network manager, but you have to make sure that you do the same with RHEL. And Debian, Ubuntu, same thing. You're installing network manager. You have to have libvirt and KVM and all that stuff set up. You have to be able to run VMs. So you have to have, the ability to run a virtual machine. So those are pretty much the requirements, and I wanted to make sure I showed the docs for that aspect. I have those things done, but make sure that you set up or have the operating system updated, pretty much. So on here, I have my Code Ready Containers folder that has a few different directories, because like I said, I switch various versions and all that stuff. So I've got 1.3 and then, the 1.8, the latest stuff. And I also just create a folder in here as like my own practice. 1.3 is the CRC version, and then the OC version is that. And again, how you found that, or how I found that, was which version of OpenShift this is look at the CRC directory in here, and then go to the releaseinfo.json, and there'll be some information there. Or you could just download releaseinfo.json. One of the other things that you need to download too that's important is the pull secret. I've downloaded that already, and you saw that in my shell. But download that and place it somewhere. You could also just copy it and then paste it in whenever you run code-ready containers. Both work, both are fine. I download it, put it in the folder so that I could access it without having to go to this page all the time, whenever I relaunch or create a cluster with a different version or whatever. So good practice from what I found. So let's go ahead. Right now, I don't have any code-ready containers or anything up and running or whatever. I just basically have those things downloaded, and I actually just downloaded 1.8, so hopefully it works. Let's test it out. I extracted it, so it'll give you like a tar.gz, just extract it, put it in there, and then there's the 3 different files, CRC, executable, which is what we're going to use. And then there's the docs.pdf, which is the getting started guide in a one page or whole PDF offline. You could use that, whatever, and then licensing information and all that stuff. So you could just work from it here, which is what I'm going to do, or you could place this wherever you install executables, user local bin, or whatever you want to do. But I'm going to run it. And I'm just going to run -h for -help. So what's available as a part of this command to provision OpenShift? So if I read the documentation, I would know what I have to do. But looking at the -h, I could see kind of what's going on. I could see, oh, hey, like the first thing I probably should do maybe is run setup. I need to run this setup, and looking at the documentation, that's what you have to do. So once you run setup, you run start. There's a status command. You could see some information there. Same with version. So let's see, CRC version on there. Look, there you go. Easy way to see, hey, OCP 4.3.8, for example. So you can see all that stuff. So I'm going to run just CRC setup -h to get the information there. And you can see there's not really too many flags that are a part of this or different ways to tweak it. You just basically need to run this with nothing else. So CRC setup, it goes through on Linux, make sure that libvirt is installed, make sure that the networking stuff is set up the right way. It has a CRC network that's part of libvirt. You could do like sudo virsh because like this is
list all
net list. I cannot type. So we could see on here, it creates this. You could get some of that information or whatever, but basically all you need to know is that CRC network got created using that setup command, and it does some stuff with network manager and all that, which is pretty neat. So then the next thing to do is basically start it. And this is going to take probably maybe 20 minutes, give or take, maybe 10, 15, depending on your machine. Probably should have started it earlier, but hey, let's see kind of how this stuff works. So let's do CRC start. And you can see we've got a couple different flags here, right? There's this bundle flag. And by default, each code-ready containers version includes a embedded version, which you saw whenever I ran this version command. It's embedded in the binary. There might be ways. I haven't looked into it too much. I just kind of handle, each version separately because they contain an embedded binary. But that binary is like a OpenShift all-in-one VM is basically what
Mhm.
that binary is. So it's the QCal3 or whatever, or QCal2 that's a part of that. You could specify CPUs. By default, it gives you 4. You could specify memory. By default, it gives you 8 gigs. Disk space is more fixed because it's using that embedded binary. So you're getting a set disk image that's 35 gigs of space. There are ways to extend that if you really need to. Just using, the libvirt type of commands and stuff like that. I've seen like a gist with some of the details around that. And if anybody's interested or whatever, could definitely share that. I don't have it handy, but it's pretty neat. You extend the disk and then you have to extend the file system if you need more space, for example. So I will run CRC start. I'm going to give this a little bit more, memory and CPU so that it might run a little bit faster. This host has nothing else running on it. 35 gigs of, or 34 gigs of RAM or whatever, 32 gigs of RAM. I'm crazy right now. 32 gigs of RAM, quad core, all that stuff. I specified my pull secret, which is important. So -P, and then specifying the location of that. If I didn't do it, it would prompt me and ask me. I could paste it in, no big deal. And I'll get rid of the log stuff because it kind of makes it a little bit verbose, and you don't necessarily need that.
No.
Ooh, so we hit an issue. So the bundle CRC libvirt 3 was requested, but the existing VM is using an older bundle. So, like I said, I switch around every now and then, and I deployed code-ready containers using the 4.2.10 bundle. So what I need to do here is basically CRC delete. I might have to do this from the other... No, I'm okay there. I was going to say I might have to do this from the 4.2.10, which would be the 1.3 version of code-ready containers, and use that binary, but this should be fine. It just deleted that VM. The reason why it did that is because in the CRC bundle, since it's creating, or CRC command, it's creating that VM, you could go and start and stop that VM, right? So if you want to, be able to reuse it later, you could just turn it off, do CRC stop, and it'll stop, and then you just could start it again, and it'll be a lot faster. And all of your existing stuff's already there. So this is now just basically running, extracting the bundle, and it'll go through and provision the VM on libvirt, and then it will go through and basically deploy all the OpenShift stuff, and you will see some of the details there. They'll say like it's waiting for the OpenShift API to come up, and then it's waiting for a couple things. We'll see that here in a little bit. But yeah, that's pretty much getting it going.
Okay.
And what this will get me is code-ready containers on this particular machine, which is not the laptop I'm working off of. I'm SSH'd into another desktop that I got over there. So one of the things with that is code-ready containers and OpenShift has a couple different things that you need to use it remotely. If you're working locally on your own laptop, you have code-ready containers going and provisioned on my own machine. This CRC executable is going to go and create a code-ready containers network that's using NAT and libvirt, and I could access it locally. But if it's using like a NAT network or whatever, and if I try to access it from some other machine, well, I can't get to it. So there's a problem there with my environment. one of the other things too is DNS, right? Domain name stuff. I need to be able to access my console, my web console. I need to be able to access my routes that I provision in OpenShift. I need to be able to access all of that stuff. And usually what the code ready containers command does is it uses DNS mask and it goes and adds a file into the dnsmask.dconfig, and we probably might be able to look at it and see it once this is going. I'm not sure, but I would imagine you'd be able to. We'll look at it whenever it's done. And it's basically saying like anything that's api.crc. Whatever the testing.lab domain is, something like that, is go to the IP that is part of code ready containers on libvirt. And then the same with like all of the routes. So there are ways, there's a blog article that Jay wrote up. If you don't mind, maybe like post that in the chat, Jay, that'd be sweet, to get, the exact information of all that. But I'll show you, the setup that I have to get all of that stuff working so that I could get it from my server that's sitting over there to my laptop that I'm working off of.
If you say you need to set up, what was it? Killing the joke. Oh, the DNS in OpenStack.
DNS mask.
No.
Neutron.
No.
It's OpenStack, right?
There was a DNS telemetry. No, there was something. There's an actual service in OpenStack. Oh God. Oh, I'm so embarrassed now.
Oh,
anyway,
OpenStack.
I killed that joke. Killed it.
Anyways, yeah, no, I'm not caught on. I'm not the expert at OpenStack.
God damn it! Now
unfortunately, I missed out on all of that pain and suffering. No, I'm just kidding. So
designate. Yeah, designate.
No, I don't get it.
It's fine. It's such a deep cut. See, that's the such a deep cut. Again, the echo messing with my head.
No, it's all good. So basically, to get around what I was talking about, since it's on a NAT network and I need to have DNS accessible locally, I could do two things for DNS. I could have some DNS server that I'm already running, which I do. I have Pi-hole and I use that to block ads and do stuff like that. Pi-hole has DNS mask a part of it. It's easy to go and add stuff into that. I'm using that. I'll show you what I'm doing there. But you could do the same thing with just DNS mask on your local machine. You could maybe, do it with a hosts file, but that's kind of a little weird because you're using wildcard DNS when you create routes. So maybe not the best way. That's probably why they're using DNS mask.
Is it even possible to use wildcards in hosts?
Yeah, I don't think so. That's what I'm saying. That might be,
you might have to create a new
one for each thing. That would be painful. I wouldn't.
And I'm not going to interrupt you I'm not going to try to take this away from you getting to it, but it's actually a lot easier than I expected to be to get DNS mask set up.
Yeah, it was like 2 lines of DNS mask config. Like I don't want to like tempt fate and say DNS mask config was easy, but it was pretty easy in this example.
I'm not the one screen sharing. I say that shit all day.
It's all good. So in the link that Jay sent up, yeah, he did post in the chat. There's some things, right? First was the DNS thing, which I'll show later, but then the next one is you need a reverse proxy, and we're just using HA proxy to be able to, take the traffic in and put it to CRC. HA proxy is running on my local server that I've got here that's running code ready containers, so I could access that stuff. And basically on here, you're creating an apps as well as an API, front end, back end, and all that stuff. And whenever code ready containers comes up, it will, basically be able to say like HA proxy will check, make sure that that's healthy, and it'll be active, and I can access that stuff. So that's pretty awesome. It's not too hard to set. All the config is in that link that Jay sent up. Basically, there's 3 ports. There's the API port that you need, which is 6443. You can see that here. And then we've got 80 and 443 for standard HTTP routes and HTTPS routes. And that's basically it for the HA proxy config. And your config will be the same as what Jay's got, which is the same as mine. You just look at that documentation. I see somebody says, am I working currently? So currently I'm working on Linux. I'm using Fedora. And I'm just SSH'd into another Fedora server here.
Isn't this silver blue?
Yeah, my laptop's silver blue, using the whole container, lockdown OS, all that stuff, which is nice. I like it.
I'm almost positive. I mean, I know it says it runs on Mac. I'm almost positive one guy on our team is running CRC on his Mac.
So before I continue and talk about the DNS stuff, which you saw, if you looked at the config, it's really simple. But before I talked about that, going back to the code ready containers and the developers.redhat.com site, there's some videos that I did on, hey, here's how you do this. So I've got a video that's on the OpenShift YouTube channel, as well as on here, that you could be able to see OpenShift running on Windows, Mac, as well as Linux. So those videos all exist, and you could see the differences, which pretty much every command that you're going to run is the same if you're using Linux or Windows or Mac. Just with Linux stuff, make sure you have those prereq packages installed. With Mac, make sure you have it updated. With Windows, make sure you're updated as well. The one difference that I found whenever I did that stuff on different on Windows or Mac or whatever was whenever I ran the I'm in TMUX session. Whenever I run the beginning part, the setup, it will go through and like with Windows, if you don't have like KVM or whatever installed, you need to have KVM installed. So you're probably not going to be able to get by with Windows on a like non-Windows Pro or Enterprise license for Windows or whatever. You need to have those so that you get the Hyper-V installed and all of that stuff. And then it will go through and run the installation stuff for Hyper-V for you if it's not done. But with Windows, like a prereq for after you installed Hyper-V is reboot. So you're going to have to reboot. That's a difference. And once you reboot, just run the CRC setup command again to make sure everything's set up and configured the right way and all that stuff. It doesn't hurt to run that multiple times. It's just basically going to go through and check and make sure everything's okay whenever it's done.
Nice.
So other than all of my scrolling over here, you could see that, hey, this was done and it's finished. So that's awesome. But before we get to actually seeing it work, I talked about the HA proxy stuff and getting that running. And HA proxy is installed and running on this server or this desktop or whatever. But you also need the DNS side. And like I said, I have Pi-hole running that's serving my whole network here at the house. You could basically just install DNS mask and drop in this config file, and it would work for you locally on your machine, and that would work too. So that's another way to do it. And you can see the config file is pretty simple. It's just saying like anything that's apps/c or -crc.testing, go to this. Same with the API stuff. So it's not too bad, but you got to add that DNS stuff there.
I'm a Pi-hole user myself.
Yeah. So if you're using Pi-hole, I mean, basically just go, I'm running it in a container, and I will either add a volume mount to /etc/dnsmask.d. And on here, there's basically like a Pi-hole config, and then you just add another one, O2LAN or whatever you want to call it, .conf, and drop whatever you want in there too, right? So it's really easy to extend whatever is going on in Pi-hole to do like local DNS stuff if you want. And you could actually add like hosts and all that stuff, and build out your network and do all that crazy stuff, and use DNS if you want to do that.
Nice. I totally screenshot that.
When I found out about Pi-hole, I was like, that's awesome. I love it. Pi-hole's awesome. I definitely recommend that if anybody is not using that.
Yeah, Brian got me using it. It's been insane. I don't know if I told you. I just checked like the stats like a day or two ago. 10% of my traffic's blocked by Pi-hole.
Yeah,
which is bonkers.
My friend, like mine's usually around 15 to 20%. Like of all DNS requests are blocked, right? Like the amount of traffic is probably way more. My friend that like he has it on his network where like his sister and his brother and his mom, like a big household or whatever, and like I think his is like 40%